Our a hybrid meeting today because we have two members online. So first I want to introduce a new member, Dick Hartman, and happy birthday. This is your birthday celebration from the town.
Now you're in more trouble than Leslie is.
But I wanted to throw it to you because you have so much experience in the town and been on so many committees. In fact, you were one of the votes when you were on the planning member to start this committee. So I wanted just to throw it to you so you can give everybody the perspective that you have and bring to this group.
Okay, talk a little bit about that. I was on the planning board for 9 years and ended, it'll be 2 years ago, in June, I guess was when I was up. And at the period of time when the town was all in and completely invested in the select board, fully behind affordable housing, and some zoning changes were made and things were happening, and the momentum was growing towards affordable housing. One of the things we recognize is that, plain and simply, is where are these people going to work? I mean, and so we asked for the select board and the town to get behind some economic development so we could indeed create more opportunity for people that did want to stay or people that did want to come here, and support the existing businesses as well as look at some kind of potential growth. From that came the economic development study that was done.
Yep.
And this committee and that study, and then Deb, right?
Yep.
Deb was there at the time also. So that's why I want to get back involved. I was also on the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners when we first put the sewers in and built the plant. Got through the first, stage into the second stage and now third stage of that. And then during that time, we recommended that there be the wastewater advisory committee because we had the charge of the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners was to build and operate. What the town had decided to get the first phase done, and then the questions started coming, and there was no centralized decision-making process or body to do that, and so we recommend. And the select board is way too busy, to get into those kind of details. At the time. So we recommended the Wastewater Advisory Committee when I was chair of the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners. So all that kind of ties together with the economic development, the sewer enabling zoning to change, all the growth that's going on, and then I think that this is that missing link to tie things together, which I think is so important, and that I'm happy to see the groundwork that's been done, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, welcome. And it's your experience both on the planning board, but also with water and sewer and the wastewater will be very helpful. We've had a number of conversations over the beginning, I guess, was of last year, was 2025, right? Talking about the economic impact, mostly negative, on the businesses. And so the town has created a task force to evaluate the fees, and look at that. So your input when we get to those discussions will be helpful. Dave Courier is our representative on that task force because of the impact, the business impact that it has on restaurants, and their voices weren't at the table at the last kind of discussion, so we have good representation there, but it will be good when we bring it back here for your input. And a lot of times we found ourselves not really even knowing what questions to ask. We're like, we don't know enough to be able to ask the right questions. So now we have our resident expert. Opening it up to public comment and correspondence. I see Mary Wright is here, is going to come up for public comment.
Good morning. Mary Wright, 83 Main Street, member of the planning board. It seems I took I took over for you.
All his slots.
Planning board, wastewater management, and Board of Water and Sewer. So I didn't realize I had taken on such a legacy position. So thank you for that update. I'm here as president of the Orleans Citizens Forum. We are an organization really dedicated to improving the quality of life in Orleans. We do that through discussions, and we're trying to shift a little bit more from just strictly discussion into how do we help citizens take action steps, and how do we go beyond sort of the just sort of telling people what's going on and then everybody goes home, right? A lot more on what do you do Monday morning after you've heard what's going on. Our next presentation is going to be on economic development, so I wanted to be sure you all were aware of it and hopefully would come and join us. It's March 26th at 5 p.m. I will be sending you all, of course, specific invitation. But Cam Hadfield, the owner of the Rail and Barley Neck, is going to be moderating the panel. We're also going to be joined by Paul Niedzwiecki. Did I pronounce that even close?
It was close.
Close, good. Who's Executive Director of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce. And Amanda is going to be talking about certainly what's going on in Orleans. And the theory of the presentation is, okay, let's just solve this economic development. Let's just solve this. Because I think there's a sense of a lot's going on, but like what are the steps that really can be taken? So the presentation is essentially going to be introduction with then Paul talking about sort of what are some strategies that have been successful in other places that we really could be planning for. Amanda will talk a little bit about the economic development pulse of Orleans, and then we're going to be throwing it to the people who are in attendance to focus on a particular factor, to say, okay, so, and we're not, I will be honest, we're encouraging us not to talk about housing because we sort of understand that without housing, nothing of this is going to happen. So what are some of those other items that we could be really focusing on as a community that would drive the progress of economic development forward? Allow those small groups to talk about things, then be able to present back. We think it's a slightly different kind of presentation. We're hoping to have, for those tables, to have members of the Chamber of Commerce, business owners, to talk about how they are dealing with a particular factor and think about what the other solutions might be. So I just wanted to let you know that this is happening and hope that you all be able to join us that evening.
Good, thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment online?
No hands raised.
All right. And then moving to last minutes from January 27th, from our last meeting. Has anybody had time to review them and could make a motion to move them along?
Motion to approve?
Okay, and a second. All right, Debbie. And so we're going to do a roll call vote because we have a hybrid meeting. So Elisa Magnata, yes. Dick Hartman.
I was not here, so.
Okay, you're going to abstain then. All right. Debbie.
Debbie Oaks, yes.
Dave Courier.
Yes.
Okay. Mike is not here. Rosalind Acosta.
Yes.
Okay. And Judy is a non-voting member, so they pass. And now moving to updates. Amanda, again, thank you for a great memo. I was explaining to our new member, to Dick, that we are very fortunate to have Amanda kind of keep things going behind the scenes and throughout in between our meetings. She has a huge job and a lot of work. So I really appreciate you taking the time just to even keep us updated and connected. A couple things that I wanted to call out were the collaboration, that I'm appreciative that, we aren't operating in a silo and that you do a really good job of connecting us back to other committees. The Cultural Council, comprehensive plan is one of those examples. And then also, I found the emerging trends kind of, interesting, that consumers are looking for experiences, not just a place to go or an item, but they're looking for experiences and locally made goods, kind of a little bit more unique. So those were the couple things that I wanted to just call out. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to call out or say on this. Okay, moving on. The first presentation is the District Improvement Financing, a DIF feasibility study. And we're getting an update and going through exactly what it is and what our potential role or next steps could be. This is not decided, but something that we're thinking about.
Yes. So thank you so much, and thank you to both Victoria Stores and Amanda Newmiller. Victoria is here in her consulting capacity, Stores Associates, and Amanda Newmiller is here from Mass Development, who I explained to you all before that we received a technical assistance grant from the state that Mass Development administers, and so I just wanted her to kind of briefly touch on that and then hand it over to Victoria.
Happy to do so. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Amanda Newmiller. I'm Director of Site Planning at Mass Development. I'm a member of the real estate planning team. And in addition to a lot of different things that Mass Development does, including lending and financing and small business support, we work directly with communities to provide technical assistance through our various grant programs. Specifically today, we are seeing the benefits of our Real Estate Services Technical Assistance Grant Program, which is administered through the Commonwealth's Community One Stop for Growth. And as part of this grant program, we specifically seek to help communities solve an economic development challenge. We do that in a few different ways. One of our focuses is municipal surplus property, but another focus is district planning. And as part of that is DIF, District Improvement Financing. And the way we assist communities is by tapping into our wonderful house doctors who have expertise in various specialties. And today we have Victoria Stores here to give us a little background on DIF and how it may be able to assist you folks in reaching your economic development goals for the town center.
Yeah.
I'll pass it over.
Thank you.
First, I want to, excuse me, make sure that the microphone is working. I've
Yeah,
done enough of
microphone's
these.
working.
And the presentation is on the slide behind the chair. I don't know, hopefully people who are joining online can also see that. Amanda has a copy for anyone who wants to retain it, keep it, fold it into paper airplanes, anything that you want to do.
Yeah, it was in our packet, so we all have a copy.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much for having me here, and thank you, Amanda, for the introduction. I will start with why we're here this morning. As you just learned, the town was awarded a technical assistant grant from Mass Development to conduct a feasibility study for the use of district improvement financing. This is, what they're doing here is it's a two-part, rather than saying, okay, we are going to provide you a grant to go through the whole process that ends in legislation. The first step, and this is very sensible, is to come into the community and learn about what you've done, what you want to do, what groundwork you already have in place that can support an implementation if the town wants to do that. So we're in the feasibility study portion, and we're partway through. I've been working with Amanda Newmiller's colleague at Mass Development, Martin, who was not able to be here. We've had some Zoom calls with your assessor and your director of planning. They've been really terrific. So today it's an update on two things. One is a little bit of where we are in the process. I certainly want to give you the opportunity to hear about this particular tool, and then to give a district improvement financing refresher. I know that a number of people in town leadership are already familiar. It's good to get everyone onto the same page. So one of the things that's very, very important with the feasibility analysis, as I said, is what groundwork has already been laid by the community. It's an essential part of feasibility. If you're starting from zero, if you're trying to look at this tool at the same time that you're doing your comprehensive plan or your economic development study, it's a very heavy lift to understand how a tool is going to be used when you're still working through what it is that you want to see happen in your community. So coming in here, right out of the gate, you have your 2022 Economic Development Plan, and we had a very rewarding conference call a little while ago. We walked through some of the goals, and I was able to check off that's done, and that's been very, very quick. So it's terrific to come into a community and see that you're already actively engaged. And the comprehensive plan, you just finished, those track pretty well. So there's some very good groundwork that is showing, and I'm borrowing a phrase from your director of planning, that the town is poised for growth. I'm hearing that this morning. Another thing that is embedded in some of the marketing and communications in both your plan and your comprehensive, both plans, is the ability to communicate with possible, private investors as well as community members, what kind of investment is desired in the town? And then to identify the ongoing goals and specific development tasks that will encourage investment and vitality. So a lot of work has been done here already on these things, and part of our process has been to go through and say, well, this particular tool, what can it, because it's a revenue gathering tool. So we're working on a process of matching together your goals, what you want to see, what you already have in place, with how this tool can move that forward with some funding and some more communication. So up there, you've met all of our team leaders. So the agenda for today, we've done the introductions. I'll touch on the timeline. I was engaged, we had our first conference call right before the holidays in December, and we've been talking every 2 weeks via Zoom since January, and walking through the different plans, discussing the kinds of growth, a little bit of refresher. I've done some preliminary revenue estimates using the tool there in the back of this presentation, and we can touch on those. So I would say that we are about 2/3 through the process, and the process ends with a formal recommendation from me as the president of Stores Associates about whether the tool is feasible in the town. And by feasible, I mean, is it going to make a meaningful contribution to accomplishing the goals that you have established? And on a preliminary basis, it is looking that that will be the recommendation. We will finish the study. I will write up a report you'll have a chance to review and comment on. But things have been very positive. And I would expect that to be in front of you by early April, barring some unforeseen circumstances. But certainly we're sensitive to the resource constraints as you have town meeting coming up. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to think about this before you get into town meeting. And Amanda, I think we are not planning to have, certainly nothing formal on the town meeting warrant.
I was going to ask if we were planning on, potentially
No,
more
the
fall?
warrant goes to print
Yeah, it was
in April, so
Yeah.
it would be potentially. fall.
potentially fall. Okay.
And, the way the tool works, while we're still on timeline, it's basically changes in assessment because of new growth. If the town did decide to implement this tool, you would basically have until December 31st, 2026 to maintain the same base value. So you definitely have time to think about the feasibility, to make a decision. And then if the town were to decide that they wanted to implement, it would probably come to the November meeting, and that would still be timely in terms of capturing some of the better value.
Okay.
Because it's a legislative process, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So the early findings from the feasibility study, there's two kinds of growth, and you see this, as you're driving around town. There's the organic growth, which is when, smaller, more routine investments of private money are made. Someone puts another floor on a commercial building, they build out even single-family homes, although they're not in the area that we're looking at. If there's new investment, I call that organic, because you're not actively promoting that kind of private investment. And so we had a good talk with the assessor about the ordinary growth that's been happening. And that's meaningful in terms of increases in the assessed values and investment in the town. The other part that will be in my final study is to look at some site-specific development opportunities. Parts of the town where you are already thinking, we would like to see something new here, or something is already in the planning process. And those do carry a higher dollar figure. If someone is putting, 10 or 20 million into a project, or even more than that, that's a very large chunk of growth for one project. So when I'm looking at the feasibility, it's both trends. It's what's already going on right now. What do you want to see happen which is closely related to, as you continue to take your economic development steps, you're promoting those site-specific opportunities.
Victoria, do you want questions as you go, or do you want us to wait until the end?
I'm comfortable with both as long as I don't take up any more time than you have this morning.
Okay. Just wondering, because you're prompting a question on the, where we want something new. When we look at our town, most of it's privately held land. So is that where you're talking about the intentional investment would be made by either that landowner or a future landowner?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
So the next steps, I'll complete the build-out analysis. You know, for example, your housing overlay district has a sample development at Post Office Square. So if that comes, what would that look like? That's part of it.
Yep.
I'll continue to work on revenue estimates. One thing that we've begun working on is the projects that could be funded with the revenue, so we'll continue working with Amanda on the priorities and getting some estimates, and then the final draft report.
Revenue tax base for new housing. Property tax, is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I will say this, I say it many times when I'm working with DIF, nothing about this tool increases the tax rate.
Just the number, the volume, the number
Yes.
of people, right?
Yes. So, well, we'll get.
Get there, okay.
Absolutely, we'll get there. But it's not a tax increase. It's,
Well, good.
We should have said that first.
well,
That's why I'm asking the question of like, yeah, like, let's,
so let's move into the refresher that might answer some of your questions.
Okay, good.
So I like to start with the virtuous cycle of, it's really a public-private partnership, and whether that's formal or not, every community, every, series of elected and volunteer officials who are serving their community are in some kind of public-private partnership with the business owners, with the residents. So I like to show this as a virtuous cycle. Up at the top right, private investment comes in. That increases the assessed value through new growth. And that increases the tax revenues from that one site without there being a tax rate increase or a tax rate increase. So obviously, when the value of your property rises from, 2 million to 5 million because you made an investment and your taxes are going up, but it's not because of a rate increase, and other people nearby might not even know that they're in the DIF district because their rate is going to be what the town establishes anyway. So you're generating revenue because people have made investments and added value to the properties in the town. District improvement financing allows you to capture some or all of those revenues from the new value and direct them to a specific list of publicly funded projects that you want to have, that the town would then make an investment in. So it's a fund, it's a revenue stream. It can be difficult for communities all over the country. You're trying to decide schools, fire, roads, snow clearance, and tree clearance. It can be very difficult to make a decision, but we are going to set aside X dollars for economic development, because often the timeline for that process is long, and the need for funding for a school is right there. So one of the things that district improvement financing lets you do is very deliberately and carefully and thoughtfully identify a revenue stream for certain things that are important, but can be difficult to get into the general fund budget. That funding for public projects, for example, streetscapes and planters in the village center, demonstrates a clear community commitment to the targeted growth and shows that you're being a partner. And we start the cycle again with the private investment saying the town of Orleans is really committed to growth here. They've communicated it. We see that they are putting their dollars into this neighborhood, and therefore I am comfortable putting my dollars in. And that's why we call it a cycle.
Can I ask-
Yeah, go ahead.
This is a really basic question. When you're in numbers, I
Yeah.
have trouble. Where's the money? Like, is the investment first? So if there's a $10 million or $20 million investment of private funds to put up a new building. So they come up with all that money first, and then they have their assessment when it's done, and then there's some amount that's an increase.
That's dedicated.
That's floating out there as a dedicated fund for somebody else's
Yeah,
project?
we're all thinking the same, that we're all trying to do the math and jump ahead in your, I'm looking at the presentation, how a DIF works. I'm like, whoa, that's, I'm where you are. Like, wait a minute. Explain,
Or is there,
back up and
or is there a
explain.
loan of upfront?
Yeah,
a financing?
like, give us a, go ahead. Yeah, it's gonna come. Do you want us to wait until it gets there? You know, my ADHD brain is
Yeah,
like
it's like,
three.
wait a minute, where's that money?
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll get to the explanation. Okay, good.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So these are my mantras. DIF plays well with others. So when you talk about loans, that can be part of it. There can be municipal bonds part of it. There could be a business improvement district. There's a lot of other economic development tools that can be used in the same place that you have established a district improvement financing district. And in this case, the area under study is the village center as identified in your housing overlay district. So there's a lot of other tools, including if you wanted to, tax increment financing, if you wanted to reduce taxes temporarily for someone. All of these tools continue to be available to you. So we say DIF plays well with others. Anyone who's had a chance to look at the DIF guide that Mass Develop published, I think that's written in there at least once, possibly more. It's not a new tax. It's not a special assessment on top of the existing property tax. It does not replace the ordinary budgeting and approval process that a municipality undertakes every year. There is a fund, but it still must be, the money is allocated and processed through your regular process. There is no lockbox, no black box. And also, the existing local zoning continues to be followed. This tool does not alter any of the zoning. In your case, your housing overlay zone is probably going to be very helpful because you're focusing a lot of energy and effort and saying what you want. So that's underpinning it, but district improvement financing does not do anything to change the zoning. So I'm thinking about the questions you're asking, and I just want to see if it would be appropriate to skip ahead and then come back.
You know, it
No, just
might help because it's hard for me to evaluate or understand what you're saying without getting what the bottom line is.
Yep.
Literally the bottom.
And just to remind, like, we're just talking about the feasibility of it right now. This is just doing a feasibility study. Would we qualify? Can we move forward? We'll have plenty of time to keep talking about and synthesizing this information. Like, this isn't gonna be
Right.
one and done.
And
Just,
it's more like, what is it?
yeah, no,
While you're dancing,
Yeah.
in my head, it's dancing all around
Yep.
the answer to what is it
Yeah, yeah.
exactly?
yeah, here we go.
Okay. So I've brought us ahead a few slides to a chart of how the revenue is coming in. So in the ordinary course of events, and this is over 30 years, within the village center, real property tax is being collected from the existing properties. And if nothing happens except, a very gradual increase in the tax rate, this large gray area at the bottom called deposit to the general fund, that is all the revenue that the town is going to continue to collect no matter what happens. So you're collecting your ordinary real property tax revenue annually and distributing it based on, the assessed value of the properties and the tax rate that is determined by the town every year. On top of that, there is a green strip that gets larger over time. And that's the effects of using district improvement financing. It's the same shape because it's still real property tax revenues. And what the DIF is doing is enabling the town, if it were to adopt it, to capture a portion of them and redirect them. And that portion is specific to someone having, because specific to new growth. So, I'm hopeful that this chart provides a little bit more of a visual clarity, because I think about numbers visually too. When you talk about their dancing, I fully understand. So if you think conceptually that if this whole thing were gray, and perhaps that's a slide I should do the next time I give this kind of presentation, if nothing happens, you'd get all of the gray there and a little bit of the green, and it would all be going to the general fund.
Wait a minute, why, what do you mean a little bit of the green? Why would it be a little bit?
There'd just be an incremental change on our property taxes over time anyway.
There'll be some improvements, there'll be some increases.
There'd be like, as our
But or there's still new growth, I mean,
well, no, but
That's right.
that's,
the growth is gonna happen or not happen regardless, so theoretically.
Well, maybe not.
yeah, but maybe,
That's the point, I think.
yeah. And also like,
We haven't got to what the devices are,
What
the
the
methods and
incentives
means that
are.
we get there, that,
Exactly.
what diff means.
And what the green
Mechanism,
is. Mm-hmm.
The math behind it. What do we do? What are we implementing? What tactics, strategies do we deploy to incentivize
Exactly.
that green
What
strategy?
are
The
incentives?
green.
Is that the?
Yes.
and that the green can be captured for a separate type of use than just general, like the gray is just our general, yeah.
It's the
So it's
incentive
just
piece.
dedicating,
We haven't
We don't know.
talked about incentives yet.
We don't know what would be included in that yet. But that's where you're saying someone, somewhere would be defining, I guess that's one of the questions is who's defining, but there'd be this definition of what would count in the green that could then be captured for different dedicated use.
Except not dedicated because it's not a lockbox. And it's
No, we do.
No.
No. For instance, the short-term rental stuff is dedicated to wastewater.
Yeah, you can,
And that stays there, right? We could say it's dedicated to economic development, and that could be like the CPC money. That could be, maybe, So there's a bucket sitting there.
Yes.
That whoever decides, this money can be used for this and this only. We
Yeah.
can't put it towards,
general operating,
we can't put it towards snow plowing. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. But we put it to where we say we can put it.
right. So it's, yeah.
It's dedicated, correct?
Yes, it's dedicated, and, if there were an emergency, this last storm was horrific, and there were money in the DIF fund that was not specifically going to something, the town would have the legal authority to take money out of the DIF fund. I haven't seen anyone do it, but that's why I say it's not a lockbox or a black box. You're dedicating it to economic development, but legally, if you get another horrific snowstorm and you really need some of that money, you can take it. Your hands aren't tied behind your back in the way they can be with some programs.
And that would be a vote of the select board or the town, whatever, we can get into that later, okay.
and maybe apologize if I didn't give enough context. I feel like I've put this in my report a bunch, but the reason why we went for this grant to get this technical assistance is because we are poised at this time to be able to, there's been a lot of expression from the community that we need to be investing more in economic development. It's not something that the town has ever had a line item until hopefully this year in our budget for, and also we did just pass the downtown overlay, which, part of that was to encourage more investment in that area. And so the idea is when that investment comes, then we reinvest some of that investment into the area to continue to encourage. And then we'll talk through what that reinvestment looks like and where our priorities lie.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's just trying to get our arms around what you're saying as you're going. So,
It's,
Thank you.
you're asking great questions, and I've done this I don't know, half a dozen times in Massachusetts and 3 or 4 in Connecticut where there's a very similar tool. And your questions are absolutely spot on, and they are very welcome, and they are very normal and welcome for people who are seeing this for the first time. So that's why I was so glad that I was able to be here in person.
Thank you.
Also that and a really great dinner at the Rock Harbor Grill last night.
Yeah. We have a lot of good restaurants here.
So, do you have a better sense now, there's money coming in and a sliver of it could be dedicated? Okay, so let me back up to where we were. Pardon the sort of flashing around. Okay, so I was on the mantra, it plays well with others, it's not a new tax, it doesn't replace your ordinary processes or zoning. The basic steps, and I think that it is important to talk about, provided the town decided that this was going to be feasible economically, that it would be useful, it's important to know as part of that decision, because I could say, this is great, you're going to get, a good source of funding scaled to the projects you want, and you could look at the basic steps and the town would say, no, this is just too much for us. So knowing what adoption looks like is important even during the feasibility process. So the basic steps, and these are really most of them are underway, is to articulate the purpose, which is exactly what Amanda just shared. Selecting the target area, right now that's the village center, engaging leadership. We're doing that today. We've talked with assessing and planning, be meeting with finance. Obviously, we've been working with Amanda since the beginning, so we've got the various people within the town who are in charge of these processes that are critical to the use and development of this tool. Identify known and desired public goals, more year-round housing, more year-round businesses. I think I'm seeing the town because the weather is so beautiful. It looks actually rather busy, but I think a week ago I wouldn't have been seeing that. So I'm a little bit skewed. I haven't been to Orleans in many years. It's lovely to be back, but I think it's probably not usually this busy in March. But some of the public goals, very broadly, that we're already talking about, support for site development, economic development programs, infrastructure like sidewalks. I did notice there are some places that you might want to get to on foot from one to the other. Those sidewalks aren't there at this time. And that's the kind of infrastructure that's really important in a village center. Sidewalks, 6 and 6A is busy. What's the safety issue about moving people around when you've got large roads going through the heart of your village? I've highlighted in another, in the gold, 2 of the most important things within the feasibility component, which is evaluate the private investment potential. What could be built or revitalized? And that's my job. That's where I roll up my sleeves and I get into the numbers, work with the assessor, look at some of the designs and things that might come that would be acceptable. Again, that housing overlay district presentation, the redevelopment of the Governor Prentz, these are things that can be used to make some estimates about what could be built or revitalized and put some numbers on those. And then if that happens, plus the organic new growth that's just going on, if you get that plus these newer projects, larger projects, would the incremental tax revenues or DIF revenues meaningfully contribute to funding the public projects? Would they help with the sidewalks? Would they help with public art? So that's a really important question, because from a village, you're not necessarily going to get, be able to pay off $60 million of bonds. That can be a very heavy lift. So the match between the estimated new revenue that could be captured, and it doesn't have to be 100%, and so that match with what it is that you want to accomplish is very, very important. That's the core of the feasibility. And then if the town makes a decision to do this, you establish a management and reporting process that is essential. This is a public tool. The town would be spending the money on things that were important to it. And it's passed with local legislation. We are some years now past the time when state approval was required. But anyone who remembered this tool from 10 years ago, there was a process you had to go to the state. That is no longer required. That's been changed. So the municipalities can enact through your regular legislative process. It's a city council. For you, it's town meeting, local legislation without having the state be here except as a supporter and cheerleader. So those are the basic steps that would be undertaken, provided the feasibility study is accepted and the town were to make a decision to move forward. So we took a look at the chart. So I will just touch very quickly on the basic steps. Capturing the revenue from the assessed value increases, and that's really the heart of it. The assessed value increases within the village center. So we established the original value. What is it today, or in this case, January 1? It's always January 1. That's about $550 million of assessed value. No, it's more than that. I'm missing a zero. So it's the total assessment roll within the village center is the baseline. And when someone makes an investment, you measure the assessed value changes each year that are the result of private investment. This is something your assessor is doing every year anyway, identifying the new growth, and that's called the tax increment, the new growth and the tax increment. This tool, through the local legislation, enables you to calculate and capture some or all of the taxes from that increment, that chunk of new growth. And the town decides how much to capture. This is absolutely a policy decision that's made locally. There's a variety of ways you can do it. You can take a percent, you can take a dollar amount, you can have a sliding scale. So that's all within implementation. Once that revenue is captured, it can fund projects like planters and sidewalks and crossings and public events and training that have been identified in the written plan. And then, as I said earlier, if things go really well and you have more than enough funds, then you need to accomplish your economic development goals, or if you have an emergency, you can draw down from that fund so that you can address other needs of the town. Again, not a lockbox. So define a district, identify the potential public projects and potential public and private investments, estimate the tax revenues, create a policy for what you would do with this, adopt through the local process, and then manage it over time. These are frequently 30 years. They can be shorter. If you accomplish all your goals, you can pass legislation to end it earlier. It still remains within the town control. So we're getting back to the section with the numbers. Very preliminary, looking at the organic growth after talking with your assessor, looking at the total assessed value just within the village center area. If new growth is 1.25% of your current assessed values for the next several years, that's an increase of $7.2 million. Assuming your tax rate is growing at the 2.5% without an override. And then the new growth from major projects could be, 20, I'm estimating just very roughly, and this is where we'll be refining within the next few years, in addition to the 7.2 million increase from people going about their ordinary business. A couple of catalytic projects could add another 22 million. So again, this is very preliminary. And then a little bit farther down the line, because if we're talking about using this tool over 30 years, it's not just what happens tomorrow or next year. Every time someone comes in the village center and makes an investment, the tool can be applied, and it's cumulative. So if you've got a $22 million investment now, the revenues from that will continue to be available. It's not just a one-off. So they get added to, just as they're added to the tax base long-term, they would be added to how you can calculate an increment for diff revenues long-term. So these are the underlying assumptions, again, very preliminary. And we're back to the chart where we have the gray. This is really if you do nothing. And by do nothing, what I mean is not, you don't have the catalytic projects that you might see when you begin to be very actively involved in working to promote some of the private investment. The idea about DIF is because you are really meaningfully and deliberately holding up a flag that says, yes, please come invest here, and we're going to show you how and what we want. And if you're doing what we want, we're going to partner with you. Not necessarily give you any money, but we're going to be an advocate, and we're doing these things to help attract that investment. The concept of DIF is that you're able to do that, and then you get more new private investment because you are actively communicating what you want to see. And that's why the strip is green, because the theory is without the economic development efforts that you're talking about today, some of that new private investment is going to go somewhere else. But when you engage in the economic development efforts, when you engage in the tasks and the projects, excuse me, it's still winter, then you're getting not just the gray general new growth and taxes, but you're getting that green strip where people are saying, this is where I want to be. I want to be in Orleans. This is an annual snapshot over time, and the scale is not great. Over time, where you see is the numbers by within 5 years, estimating just under $600,000 cumulative. By 10 years, about 2.37 million cumulative has been generated and captured. And I'm making an assumption here that you're capturing 50% of what you could. That half of the revenue generated by these new investments is going to the general fund for all of the purposes that are so important to the town. I've seen people capture 75 or 100%, depending on their needs. But this is just a very conservative, very balanced, to show you a very middle of the road choices that you could make. A very middle of the road choice, by 20 years, you've had $9.6 million conservatively that have been able to use for projects and for economic development goals. And that's very conservative. Over time, it's probably going to be more, but when we talk about a 20-year projection, I don't know how much I would rely on me. I can tell you what's in my model. A lot of good things can happen. So this repeats, hopefully a little bit clearer. At year 10, on the preliminary estimates, you're still getting $45.8 million to the general fund for all of your purposes. But over the 10 years, you've accumulated $2.3 million specifically into the DIF fund for the economic development purposes. And $2.3 million is probably not going to put in that many sidewalks. We understand that. So what I often see are municipalities who are reaching out for grants or other lower cost funding for some of the higher ticket projects. And I know some of Amanda Newmiller's colleagues at Mass Development have indicated that the other state agencies will look favorably on a community who's putting some skin in the game, literally. They've adopted this tool. We know they're serious. And that can have a positive effect on a grant application. It can have a positive effect on, getting something from the state revolving fund, some loan applications, and also outside of Massachusetts, where you're showing, yes, we're working really hard at this. So that $2.3 million is certainly very meaningful for the streetscapes, for some of the technical services, and it can be leveraged and used to attract more capital for the bigger ticket items. And I'm going to pause there for a minute so that we can catch up with any questions.
And Roz, I saw you come on camera. Do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, no, thank you, Alyssa, and thank you, Victoria. This was a really great presentation. I guess I just have a point of clarification. What would be the initial grant from Mass Development for this project? I understand the process and how this runs, and then what is the ongoing role of Mass Development? Assuming we're approved, assuming this passes in our town meeting. How do you stay involved?
So the grant for Mass Development is underway right now. It's a grant of technical assistance, so it's actually not of funding. It is
Gotcha.
of the services of Victoria to perform this feasibility. In terms of ongoing engagement, there is the opportunity for Amanda and other staff members to continue to, if, for example, you locally decided that this was a tool you wanted to pursue and you wanted to move on into the implementation stage, you could apply for additional grant funding to kind of assist with that process as well. But in terms of administering the diff or monitoring the diff, that is actually a purely local process that is part of however you folks decide to set it up as part of your diff master plan.
All right, perfect. So this is really just for technical assistance, and then we get us going, and then to set up a plan. Okay, gotcha. And if you can give us maybe some examples of where you've seen this work best, like if we had a North Star in a place where, wow, this town's really knocked it out of the park with the diff. I don't want to put you on the spot there to name one town, but it just would be good for us to have a mentor, I guess, in this process per se.
So I want to give you two examples, both towns. This tool, as you may know, is the earliest adopters were cities, people with a lot of capacity, a planning director with 2 or 3 assistants. So looking at the town level, where as the tool gets, as you see it, one from Massachusetts several years ago, well, it feels that long, it was pre-pandemic. I worked with the town of Easton directly, not through Mass Development. The town of Easton was at the very end of one of the light rail lines, and they were getting development, multifamily housing development, market rate, in a part of the town that hadn't previously been developed, and they liked that. They were able to preserve the vitality of their town center, and yet have people who were moving into a portion of the town where there was room for a lot of multifamily. There was, a couple of shopping plazas. So they were getting development where they wanted it, but the constraint was that there was no sewer service. And in order to build it out the way they wanted to build it out, they entered into an agreement with a neighboring town to bring a sewer pipe into the town of Easton. What was important for them was that the rest of the town, the people who were miles away from the new development area, didn't have to pay to bring sewer into a part of the town, to bring in a service that they were never going to use. Mm-hmm. And so they went through a feasibility process and then adopted at town meeting a diff plan that captured revenues pretty much to pay for all of the sewer. What they did was they took out a bond anticipation note, forgive me if, and then ultimately issued longer-term tax-exempt bonds, and the diff revenues went a long way toward paying for that. Took the burden of a pretty heavy infrastructure lift off the residents of the other part of the town and placed it more clearly on the area that was benefiting from that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that was actually terrific. There were, when I worked with someone to write a plan, that was very much about getting that sewer in. But we made sure that there were other improvements that could be made. They had some ponds. They wanted to extend a walking trail so that people from both parts of the town could get to some of the beautiful lakes and green spaces. So there was some of that in the plan as well that was very important. Again, as I said, it can be very difficult for a municipality to say, no, we're really going to spend the money on a bike path. And at that town meeting, it was very interesting because they had a very active debate about whether or not to buy string instruments for the schools. And, so that debate of how they were weighing how they were going to spend the money, for me, really reinforced the value of DIF within a community. They didn't actually debate about the sewer. They debated, is this the tool to do it? Versus the push-pull, I think it was between violins or resurfacing a field, which is a great democratic process. But it was an example of the decisions that elected leaders and then in town meeting, town members actually have to make. And DIF gives you a tool to make that conversation easier. The truly hit it out of the park was actually in the town of Cheshire, Connecticut. They had an area, depending on how much time you spend in Connecticut, at the junction of Route 84 with Route 684, a little bit southeast of the city of Hartford. Small town, lovely, very much like you, a little bit bigger, beautiful village center, some development pressures. But they'd wanted for years to have both housing and commercial retail up near Route 84. But no, they could not persuade the residents of the town to vote to put in, again, this is a big thing, to put in sewer infrastructure. And so they established a district. They call it TIF, tax increment financing, because every state calls it something different. It was the same tool, and they had, for a big portion of it, a private developer came in and said, oh, you're using this tool, I'm going to build my development here. And when this development is finished, it's going to generate tax revenues that will pay for the sewer, and they arranged, the private investor paid for the sewer and is now being reimbursed. So when I ran the initial estimates, how long the new development would take to get to an assessed value that would pay back the sewer, I said 7 years. And it's going to be done in 7 years. And to me, that was really hitting it out of the park. They found a genuine public-private partnership that came in because they had adopted this tool. And I was presenting to them the same town just a couple of weeks ago, and they said, this worked really well for us. The rest of the town taxpayers, again, like the town of Easton, didn't want to put sewer up by Route 84. They had other priorities, so they didn't have to pay for it. And the town has come back, and they're saying, well, we have a village center too. What can we do? What can we do for revitalization? What can we do for infill? They're having some of the same pressures. People want more rental housing. That can be very difficult to site, to find a place. They want to make sure that their sidewalks get fixed. So very similar to what you're thinking about. And they had so much success right out of the gate that they want to use it again and see how it can help solve some of their other problems.
So it's interesting, you can, go beyond just like sidewalks and planters and lights and use it to leverage to service debt for bigger infrastructure.
Yes.
Interesting.
That would have made a big difference for us right now.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. Like
That.
can we backtrack?
Yeah, no kidding. And Victoria, just one follow-on question, in terms of more traditional models of percentages, can you tell us kind of the average most of these DIF towns will take from these funds? Is it 50%? Is it 60%? Does it really vary widely? Just so that we have maybe a little bit of a blueprint. And then Amanda, I think it would be probably a great idea to talk to maybe Easton and Cheshire, Connecticut, just to learn from their potential mistakes or just learn what they've done to make it so successful.
Yep. And also with Amesbury on the North Shore, which was,
Always Amesbury.
Hometown, always.
well,
My hometown. My hometown.
Amesbury was one of the original mass development pilot projects with the creation of all of the DIF materials, so I worked on that. The the gentleman who was in charge of that process has moved on, but he's still around. But I think that they could be very helpful in terms of what has it been like to implement. That was adopted in 2018. So they've had several years of practice. So Amesbury had a very specific goal. They were having a youth sports center was coming in the northeastern section of town, up near the highways. It was a location where they were very excited to have it. There was going to be a hotel development. But they needed some serious roadway infrastructure to move the traffic around appropriately, because this was going to be visitors from out of town, ideally. And what they did was similar to the town of Easton. They said, okay, they had a bond anticipation note. When they established the DIF, they took, I think it was 75% to dedicate it toward repaying the long-term debt that they had to take out for the roadway and the mobility infrastructure, and some safety as well up there. Because they had a pretty good sense of what their borrowing costs were going to be over time, they had a special part of their DIF formula was written in to accommodate those special needs. And forgive me because I haven't read this, but it was definitely tracked to what the needs of the bonds were going to be. And then the other portions of it were going to flow to the city. So it was a formula as well as a percentage. And you can do that. You can do both. When I see a percentage, it's really typically 75%. Sometimes one community that I was working with that ultimately decided not to pass it, we were looking at 75% for the first 5 years and then 50%. And that can be done. For the town of Cheshire, they said, if you meet these development goals, X percent, X dollars of commercial investment, X dollars of residential investment, you can get up to $7 million. So there was an actual dollar, that was the estimated cost of the sewer infrastructure, and they captured that. So you have the ability to control it, but generally, when we start talking about it, it would be 75% is what people are looking at. 50% is more conservative. I like to start there. And then if you get comfortable, as you start to understand the goals, you can increase it. You can also use a formula and say 75% up to $1 million a year, and everything else goes to the general fund. The important thing is that it be written into the plan, and then if you want to change it, you do need to go back to your town meeting and say, we're amending the DIF plan to change that. So when you have a town meeting structure, thinking hard about how you want to do it, maybe having a fail-safe or a formula or something, I would recommend that you think about, because the process of amending one of these is not as easy for you as it is for a city.
And for town meeting, is it a simple majority? Okay. Any other questions from people right now? I'm sure this is going to come on our agenda again, Amanda. So the next steps here are, you guys are going to continue with your analysis.
Yep.
And then at what point will we discuss it again, and what should we be doing in the interim to make sure that we ask good questions and know enough?
Well, the last slide that's important, and I've been talking a lot, so forgive me. We're entering into the process of refining some of the goals. The placemaking projects, the sidewalks, the signage, an anticipated cultural hub. I know that there's a lot of discussion about that. Mm-hmm. And also, something that I think we're going to be digging into more is using the ability to use the funds to maintain and expand your organizational capacity. Not just, you can choose to contribute to Amanda's salary and benefits from this. There can be, technical assistance, surveying business needs, helping them obtain grants can be funded. So the money can be used. It's so easy to think of it, and I had the two examples of sewer, but other kinds of infrastructure, other kinds of programming, and the ability to support the district itself. And that's the process that we're going into. So I would invite the Economic Development Committee to support Amanda and provide ideas about, can we do this? Wouldn't it be great if we did? These are the things that we know we want to accomplish.
So
Let's-
defining the use, our committee can talk about defining the use,
Yeah.
potential use. Okay.
And then the very last, so this is we've been going through this, and the very last slide
Yeah.
has the link for where you can look more about this on the Mass Development website. And there are, if you're not tired of me, I'm the voice in all of the webinars. Much more detail in those webinars.
Well, thank you.
Listen, just one thing.
Yeah.
This does not replace growing that green. This is not replace growing that green strip. This is just once you do grow the green strip is what you do with it and how you sign it. So the real economic development and getting real growth may require other tactics. This is not going to, except for if you have a specific project where you got a railroad, or you have a highway, and you're gonna need some infrastructure work, and say, oh, fine, we can get this project done, because here's some of the money that's gonna come to it, because if these people invest, there will be taxes there, right? And so you can assign it to a project. So for us to grow, to have economic development, there's still other, and this is the part of it, I get it, but this is the longer term.
I
opposed to the
do
first step.
see the investments that we talk about as being attractive to investors. So,
Right, I get it.
and
I get it.
having the tool itself, I think people will say, oh, this town is invested in their economic development and in this area, and will be taking my investment and reinvesting it. So I do think it's a little bit, but there are other, yes, interventions.
I do think it's a little softer in our community for a developer than saying, hey, we can help put a sewer in.
Well, but I think we should challenge ourselves to think about how to leverage this. I don't think,
Agreed,
yeah,
agreed, But I don't think it's, first of all, it's longer term, right?
Yeah.
So to jumpstart this, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm all for it. I really like it. I think it's great. But I do think that it's not I think it's probably an easy thing to probably start, but I think there's other things that we need to do to help grow that green, to help
Yeah.
real.
yeah.
That's my only point.
Real
It's just-
Right.
incentives.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point, because it's not the answer to economic development, it's not gonna solve it, but it is a piece, it is, one of the quills, so to speak, that we can use to leverage and to advance economic development. For me, I don't find it so interesting to pay for like planters and lights and sidewalks. I'm like, okay, but using, I mean, I know it takes it off the tax roll, and that could be helpful to the rest of the residents and citizens, because then it's like very specific. But I would love to us to think about is there something we could do to leverage it so that it does help people want to come in and make an investment here. I'm not sure as a developer, I'd be like, oh, good, they're using the money to invest in planters and sidewalks. It would help, the overall value in beautification. But if it were some way going to leverage infrastructure or activity or something else happening that's going to keep this economic, engine
Yeah,
growing
although-
and,
Planters and lights and those things as a commercial tenant might be attractive. And so then the people who are building commercial properties,
Yeah.
that is a
Yeah.
good attraction.
it's going to happen anyway, though. So I'm not
I
sure.
don't have money for it right now.
Yeah, I think that,
Well, but
Yeah,
I think
these
the
are-
an important message that Victoria has.
Won't have money for it with this
yeah,
either.
yeah,
Until it gets going.
until it gets going.
Until you get
It
that
should be a
initial
flywheel.
project
Right,
Yeah.
that, starts the
Well, and
exactly.
yeah, I think we're starting to unlock that. But I think what Victoria has consistently said to me is we've got to think about kind of all the
Pieces.
things so that we have the flexibility later on.
Makes
when-
sense.
When we are.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that makes
That's
sense.
what I think is long-term. And I think the
Yeah.
plays well with others is the key.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But the other thing I latched on to is the catalytic project.
yeah.
How do we get that?
Yes, that's what, yeah.
Right, that's,
The developer that got paid back their sewer investment through taxes, that is huge.
Mwah.
Yeah, that is huge because it's significant cost, right? So, oh, I'm gonna make this initial investment and then I'm gonna get paid back or partially paid back. That's where you're gonna get people, businesses with money coming in and be like, oh yeah, I want to invest here. They really want to play with me. So,
That's where you pair it with tax increment financing,
exactly, yeah.
which,
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, so we have to move on to our next agenda item, but I don't want to lose Rosalind or Dave or anybody else have anything. Judy? Nothing? Okay, great. Thank you for your time and letting us jump in and interrupt you and ask questions. And definitely will be accessing the good resources that Mass Development has. They've got a lot of really good resources on affordable housing, on a lot of good content there. So thank you, both of you, Amanda and
and our literal next step is a walk through the village center
yeah,
this afternoon.
this afternoon.
I don't know how many people are able to join us. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, there is a lot of potential.
There.
A lot of potential. So I'm glad that you're bringing this forward and pursuing this.
Well, and maybe you get to see this again at planning board.
No, I'll see you later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not done.
4:00.
And there's going to be a lot of discussion. I think it's going to take people a while to kind of understand like what it is, and whenever you start talking about new taxes or you know, people kind of freak out. So,
Can I just say
Yeah.
one other thing as we're doing this, and you're walking through the village center, that, you know, you talk about the master plan, the DIF master plan, but you'll hear me say this at planning board, because I say it frequently at planning board. What we have not done for a very long time and never done formally is what I'm gonna call a master plan, a community process, a visioning of the village center, and imagine what if you had a magic wand and you could put this here and this here and this here, and how do things flow together, and what do we want to connect, and what activities and et cetera we want to have, and where should they be? We've not done that. And this is the opportunity, we see now, we have not done that. And with the housing overlay district, and we keep focusing on the village center, but we've not gotten granular about exactly where. And I think we've already made some mistakes. So,
All right.
just in the back of your mind.
Absolutely, as we take that walk on this beautiful day.
all right, good. Well, enjoy your walk. Frequent our restaurants. Go out for lunch. And thank you for your time again. So next up is our licensing process. I know this has come up in different conversations, kind of the regulatory process for building. I know that there's a small group that's meeting to look at the different regulatory environment within the town of how do you permit, how do you license. And I wanted to start with liquor licenses, because that's so much of a prominent piece of our economic development restaurants, and understanding what it takes to get a license, what the process is. And so thank you for coming in just to educate us, because I was like, I don't know anything about this. I've never done this before. So I wanted to, and then we've got this great data of how many we've had over time. And so then we can open it up for quick discussion.
So I invited Laura St. John Dupuis, who is our licensing administrator here in the town manager's office, to answer any questions you might have or kind of outline the process. I do want to set a little bit of context that we are undergoing a licensing review through legal right now. They're going through all of our policies and to make sure they align with the state, and that they are actually in line kind of within our own policies and bylaws and all of that. So that is in process right now. So Laura might, say that's under review at legal right now. We're kind of, in the middle of it. But
Yeah.
that was a commitment that we made to the business community, that we would review all of that and make it more streamlined as we possibly can, while meeting state regulations, and also make sure that our internal processes are as streamlined as they, and clear as they can be. Yeah.
Did you have specific questions?
Yeah, if you can, we're gonna throw it to Dave real quick, but also, I just wanna, like, if I were a new business starting, what would I do? Like, what is the process?
Well, it would depend upon what type of license you're applying for.
Okay.
So obviously, alcohol is what you brought up originally.
Yeah,
That process starts with filling out an application with the ABCC.
yeah,
Oftentimes, people will make the application on their own. It's quite an involved process. Usually, people will hire an attorney that specializes in this to help and make sure that the information that is provided to us is everything that is needed. Once the application comes to my desk or our office, I review the application, looking to see if there's anything missing, answering questions that somebody might have about the licensing process, and then determining if it's a new license, if it's a change of class, some kind of change in the license. The application has to start with ABCC and comes to us, whether it's
Okay.
new, changes, amendment, any kind of anything.
and then they do it annually once we have it?
So the application is once you apply.
Okay.
There is, ABCC will send us a list and applications for renewal. So it's not the entire process all over again. A letter will go out from me with this specialized form that must be signed by November 30th per the ABCC. And then we make a list of all the people that have renewed, submitted all of their insurance information, all of the required documents that the town and the state requires to have.
Yeah,
To make it really, really secure in case, God forbid, something were to happen.
Okay.
It's got insurance. We know all about it. We file all of that information with the ABCC, and the license is renewed once the select board votes to approve the license.
so as many people that wanna apply can get a license, or is there how does the,
We don't, the town of Orleans does not have a quota system
okay,
at the moment. And I believe that it's been this way for quite some time, that there has not been a quota. And anybody that would apply for a liquor license, there's also a few other things that need to happen that don't happen in our office. I think if there was a new building that became vacant downtown and somebody wanted to turn into a restaurant and have a bar, they would need to check to make sure that the zoning is
Okay.
is in such a way that they're allowed to do that.
Okay.
Not everything that would necessarily
see.
come to me can,
Yeah.
absolutely everybody.
Makes sense.
And it can have a liquor
so
license.
it starts with zoning,
They would
then-
want to do that due diligence, check on that part of it.
Okay.
Oftentimes, though, I find that it is a business that's selling, somebody's purchasing the business. And so nothing's essentially changed, except there's new buyers.
I see.
They're doing the same kind of all alcohol beverages,
Business.
beer and wine
Okay.
business that they had.
okay. So then it goes to the select board, and they're the determining,
Yes.
they make, so they could say no?
They could potentially say no.
Okay.
I think that, since I've been here, I have never had anybody ask or say no. You know, the
Yeah.
board has not said no. I haven't had anybody challenge anybody's application. So potentially, yes, they could. I would suggest if there was a point where somebody suggested that the board not approve it, that we bring town council in to make sure that everything is done the correct.
Not approved for appropriate reasons?
Right,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I know, anybody else, Dave, you have some questions? You were on
Oh, yeah, I
camera.
know. I just had a question from Amanda. You're saying to make sure that we are aligned with the state. Like, what is that? What do you mean by that exactly? Like, by aligning with the state? I thought we were already aligned with them, and what wouldn't we be aligned with?
Meaning the legal review, what we're.
Aligned with the state. I'm not remembering that in terms of use. Is that, where'd they say that, Dave?
I said Amanda just said
Oh,
that in her speech.
We want to make sure that when we quote Mass General laws on applications, they are the most up-to-date general
Yes.
laws. They do change occasionally, and we want to make sure that any kind of information that I'm handing out to a potential new licensee or an existing licensee, that if something is to change in the Mass General laws around licensing, particularly alcohol licensing, that people are made aware of that and that they're following what the
I think what Dave's talking about, Amanda, is when we were talking about the regulatory process and the committee that was meeting, and you were talking about general counsel and making sure that we were aligned with the state on that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
correct.
Yep.
Okay.
General counsel, special counsel, we have town attorneys that specialize in licensing, liquor licensing in particular, and they are reviewing all of the applications that we have on the town's website and making sure the rules and regulations of the liquor licensing authority, very hard to say, it is accurate and matches Mass General laws, so that everybody's on the same page and that there aren't any surprises as far
Right.
as somebody is not following a regulation or a law. And we don't want to be not aware of something, and we certainly want to make our licensees aware if something has to change or if something has to change.
Yeah, go ahead, Debbie.
It says enclosed.
It was the data
something-
dashboard.
Oh, the data dashboard. Okay, for licensing. I guess just my question is, do we have, like, is there instruction manual where if you want to start a business in Orleans, here's where you go, here's what you need, here's how to figure out X, Y, Z, rather than, like, we can talk about specific licenses, but how do you know that you need that license? I don't even know what licenses there are.
Yeah, the different types of liquor licenses I'm learning, there's different, in-holder, entertainment,
So there's liquor licenses, but what if you're not even talking about liquor? What if
Yeah,
you're talking something
we,
else?
on the economic development section of the planning webpage has
a license.
kind of the start of guides for businesses. That was done before my time. And as I've shared with you guys, I am in the process of developing an economic development webpage. That happens fiscal year of next year, hopefully, if the budget passes. So on that webpage, it will have a guide for if you're this type of business, this is what you need to do, this is who you need to visit. So it's in process.
Dave, your hand is still up. Do you have another question? No, down, okay. So looking at the licenses, the data, it looks like the liquor stores have stayed pretty much consistent, but then the other licenses have gone down over time.
Question.
He does
I
have a
think we are-
question.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your
Just
hand.
to what you just said, I'm pretty sure the liquor stores are capped, aren't they? Kind of like the cannabis. That's why cannabis you had to do.
Oh, okay.
You had to do 2 retail cannabis licenses because you have 8 liquor. You have to do at least 20%. So
Oh,
you
I
had to
didn't
have
know
at
that.
least 2 licenses. Yeah, well, it was a state rule, not a
Okay.
town rule.
Okay.
But in that process, I thought, if I remember correctly, somebody said that during that process, I can't remember if it was planning or if it was the select board, but somebody had said that we have a cap on liquor stores.
Okay.
But, and that's why we had 7, and if maybe Dick remembers, but when the Main Street Gourmet came on, Wine Gourmet, I think
Oh,
we
yeah.
had to add one at town meeting. I think I thought Dick was there for that, and maybe he remembers. If not, no big deal. But I think we're capped on the. Long story short, sorry, we're capped on liquor as far as I'm remember. Capped on liquor stores.
Okay.
There seems to be a cap on liquor stores. However, there's 2 different types. You can have all alcohol, wine and malt. And I don't know if there's exemptions that are made to add additional liquor stores.
I wonder if it's based on like the population or some other criteria.
It does have something to do with that. So what I
Okay.
would need to do is go back to the ABCC and ask them about the quota for the liquor stores. The restaurants are all unlimited.
Okay.
So, and that can be in a configuration of all alcohol or wine and malt. You don't have to have an all alcohol license.
Okay.
You can do just wine and beer if that's what you would like to do.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have anything else they want to add on this licensing processing and, you know, the first look at permitting and licensing? I guess one question I have is there a benefit, or maybe Amanda, you know, is there a benefit to having a cap? Or have we seen as an economic development tool of either incentivizing people to come in and make a business, or is there a benefit to having any kind of guidelines on the number that should be had in a town for economic development?
This has not come up in my world. You know, I went through and tracked the number of licenses that we've issued every year, and at the moment we're at, if you look at the spectrum, I mean, it's stayed pretty much the same, but we're at the lower end of that range at the moment. There's a line for liquor licenses specifically, and then the other types of licenses that we offer, like an in-holder entertainment, coin operator, things like that. But that's the other licenses. So all the liquor licenses are on that, the first line under the licenses and permits issued by the select board.
Right, so 2017, we had 146.
That's other licenses.
Okay,
Liquor licenses right now, 2016 we had 40, but right now for liquor licenses, we have 35
okay.
issued. And that includes both seasonal and annual
Okay,
and year-round.
okay, so it's been pretty flat, okay. I don't know, does the chamber have anything, any concerns or?
No concerns, but you're going back to your question on the value. Your restaurant is certainly of value if you have a liquor license and there are no more available liquor licenses in the town, right?
So that's what I was, so there is a cap.
There's no cap yet.
there's no
There's no
cap.
cap now. There used to be, because I remember a restaurant being for sale and it had a
Liquor license with it?
malt and beer license. It was a wine and beer license. And that added value to the sale of the restaurant. When there was no longer a cap, the value of that property went down. Because it didn't have a liquor license anymore.
They could have applied.
Anyone could have applied.
Yeah, but they could have
Anyone
applied.
right?
Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily transfer with a sale. They would probably have to reapply?
Yes, they would.
Yeah, they would have to reapply anyway, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, if somebody decided that they didn't want to serve alcohol at all,
Right, they could-
relinquish, that license can be
Yeah, okay,
Right.
taken away.
okay.
So,
Dave?
Yeah, sorry. I've had
That's
my
okay,
hand raised.
I just saw your yellow hand up. Go ahead.
I would like to come back to this discussion if we could, because there's like 350 or 359 municipalities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and 350 of them have a cap. So it's kind of like Orleans is one of the very, very select few in the state of Mass that doesn't cap. And I think we should probably look into that.
I guess I have a basic question. Why is a cap a good thing or not a good thing?
I guess that's, yeah, I don't know. Why is a cap a good thing or not a good thing? Is there an economic development reason that you know of?
Are you talking to me?
No,
Are these questions directed
yeah,
to me?
anybody. Does anybody know of an economic development? I mean, maybe we ask Victoria. She's an economic development expert, but is there a benefit to a cap?
I have worked in other towns that have had a cap. This is the first town I've worked in without a cap.
Okay,
I can honestly say that in the other towns that I worked in, there was never a line of people waiting for a license to become available. I've never had to have that kind of, well, somebody has already put their name on a list. We never ran into that problem, so I don't know, with the exception of what you're saying, Judy, about like,
With the sale.
right. Because I think that based on population and things like that, ABCC sets the cap, if there is one. The towns don't. You can ask for a cap to be a certain amount, but ABCC will ultimately make the decision on,
Oh, okay. So okay.
right? And
If the town asks for a cap, is that,
well, if
what you're
it's, and
saying?
to ask for a cap, because we don't have one currently, that has to go before the legislature. There has to be a town meeting, there has to be a ballot vote.
Oh, wow.
It just can't be a letter that's written and signed off by the select board saying,
Okay.
you know, we would like to set a cap at
And the
20 licenses.
legal is currently reviewing that, and they're going to be producing,
Oh, okay.
you know.
Whether or not, what the process would be and what, okay.
I don't think it's very common for people to go from unlimited to limited.
Okay.
That's what I'm understanding, is that is not something that is, trying to get answers for these questions myself, it was not easy to find towns that went from unlimited to adding a cap.
Okay.
How many towns did you find that went from cap to unlimited?
I think there's only one that I'm aware of at this point.
So it's not a common thing to change, like anything. A lot of towns kind of are hesitant for big changes.
Either way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my thinking is that 1978 was when limits or capping changed, or I'm not exactly certain, but I'll find out from our town council. There was a lot of changes back then, and then in 1982, but going from capped to unlimited, it seems to be a few towns on the Cape are unlimited. And I didn't even know they existed, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So it's definitely different.
Well, I also wonder, when it's capped, then who's reaping the benefits? The town selling the liquor license, or the business selling?
We don't set the,
The fees,
I mean, like the state fee is the one that is,
well, I think that if you have a business and you hold a liquor license, Judy, as you had said, I mean, I would think that if you wanted to pursue some sort of financial gain from your license because, you know, you think it's going to help with your sailing, and that's one thing. But as far as fees are concerned, the town charges the fee that they set, which has to be changed at town meeting. And then the ABCC, they charge a $200 filing fee. They don't charge another fee, but they have to do an investigation. There's quite a lot of work that they need to do before they even approve a new or a transferred liquor license. So the fees, when you're talking about fees, it's the fees that the town charges for a license.
Okay.
And those can change.
Okay.
If there was a limit, it would be an asset that could be sold, like in Boston. I mean, they
Not
were
Right, but who's,
by us,
they're
private business.
What's either,
$500,000 for a liquor license.
it's either,
and who's selling it? Who
The person who owns it,
yeah,
Okay.
it's an asset.
It's-
so it's either protectionism or libertarianism. Those are the poles. Either
Yeah.
we're gonna protect and limit, or we're gonna open the door and say anybody who wants to do it can do it.
but
Okay.
to Dick's point, the asset belongs with the property.
Okay. In the, where it
Right,
is.
you can't have a liquor license and say, I don't want liquor anymore, I'm gonna sell it to the guy down the street.
You can transfer it.
Yeah, you
transfer
can.
it.
On a cap.
Absolutely.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
So you could separate, you
Oh,
could
then
separate
I was
the
told
liquor li-
differently, okay, that's interesting.
so liquor license is its own
Yeah,
commodity.
I thought it was attached to the property.
You still get vetted and all that other stuff has to happen, but they're, if you follow the trail in Boston, they're all over the place.
Right, there has to be an establishment, probably.
No, in Orleans,
Going with-
your license is attached to your property, and it dictates what you can and can't do on your property too. Like, for instance, if you have a like you own a restaurant and you build an outdoor area, you still have to go back in front of the select board and get the outdoor area approved, because if you didn't have that outdoor area before you owned the property, they issued the liquor license according to what you brought in front of them. So when you alter the use, technically, you're supposed to file something with the town clerk, town administrator's office, and it goes in front of the select board and they approve it.
What about if it's capped, though? If it's capped, then, I mean, or if there was, then it's a separate, is that what you were talking
No,
about? That that's-
I'm sure, I think that once you change the use of your building, I think it doesn't matter whether you're capped or you're not capped, like, we, as the town of Orleans approved, okay, let's say you're some renegade weirdo that owns a bowling alley and you decided to put an outdoor deck on. When you first approved that license, there was no outdoor deck.
So you would
So
amend
you said
your
you-
existing license. That would
Yeah,
be an
so you would
amendment
amend you would amend your existing license, but you don't just automatically get to do what you want after
That,
that.
and then you'd go to the select board, I'm assuming, for
Yeah.
a vote on that. So
The
they're,
licensing authority
But
of
that would
Orleans.
also have to go to ABCC too. So it
Okay.
would be another application, another amendment form that you'd fill out through the ABCC and then submit it to the
Okay.
town. The select board would vote on it, have a public hearing, then that paperwork would go over to ABCC, and then they would come out and investigate to make sure what you're wanting to do is what's outlined in your application.
okay. All right. Anything else on this topic? Laura, thank you for coming in.
Very welcome.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
New business, we still need one more member. I know there were a couple people that were considering. Thank you, Dick, for coming on board. And we still need to go back to the leadership vote. Vice chair, secretary. So at some meeting in the future, we should do that. We will also, like, what month is this? March? So we're coming right up real quick on revoting our whole, the chair and vice chair, et cetera. So we should all give some thought to what does that succession plan look like. And so the vice chair we might want to be queuing up to be the chair. Just putting it out there. Any other new business that you guys want on the agenda for next month? All right, so the next meeting is April 14th. Now, when is town meeting? Are we going to,
We'll have to talk about it at the next meeting.
Okay, so
It's
the next-
May 11th.
okay, so we'll, whatever warrant items that we know and whatever we can discuss or that we want economic development to weigh on. There doesn't seem to be that I'm not doing a great job of tracking everything happening in the town, but is there anything related for economic development that we as in the last town meeting, really wanted to make sure we met on and voted on?
Not that I can,
Think of off the top of your head?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then, with that, I'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, Dick.
Second.
And thank you, Debbie. Elisa Magnata, yes. Dick Hartman.
Yes.
Debbie Oakes.
Yes.
Dave Courier.
Yes.
And Roslyn Acosta.
Yes.
Thank you. We're adjourned.